My girlfriend said, I lied about my past, so what? I said, you're right. Then I hired a PI, found the truth, then moved out without a word. 3 days later, she was admitted for a breakdown. I'm 31 male, a project manager. My life is a series of Gantt charts, risk assessments, and critical path analyses. I find comfort and order in knowing the variables. I thought my relationship with Sandra, 29, was the most stable, well-resourced project of my life. We'd been together 2 years, sharing an apartment for 1. We were building something solid, or so I believed. Sandra's personal history was a key part of her appeal. She presented herself as the product of a stable, loving, upper-middle-class environment. Her father, she said, was a respected surgeon. Her mother, a university lecturer. She'd attended a good private college, survived a single messy breakup with a man who turned into a possessive stalker, and was now building a career in marketing. She was polished, charming, and seemed fundamentally secure. The first variance in the project plan appeared about 3 months ago. A minor data discrepancy. At a charity gala, she was telling an anecdote about her surgeon father. A man nearby, an actual neurosurgeon, politely asked which hospital her dad was affiliated with. I saw a flicker of panic in Sandra's eyes before she covered it with a bright laugh. Oh, he's retired now, a total golf bum. You wouldn't have crossed paths. It was plausible, but it contradicted a story she'd told me a month prior about him still handling a few complex cases. When I gently pointed this out later, she waved it off. It's just easier than explaining his convoluted semi-retirement schedule, Paul. It was a clunky patch, but I accepted it. The project was still on track. The second crack was more significant. She wore a vintage-style gold locket constantly. It was, she claimed, a precious family heirloom passed down from her great-grandmother. One night, as I helped her untangle the delicate chain, my fingers brushed against a tiny inscription on the clasp. To my A, forever, M. Sandra and Paul, no A, no M. Who's A? I asked, keeping my tone light. The atmosphere chilled instantly. It belonged to my great-aunt, she said, her voice a little too sharp. Before my grandmother got it. An M? Her husband, she snapped, pulling away. It's a family piece. Can we not dissect it? On its own, it was nothing, a plausible explanation. But added to the story about her father, it felt like another data point that didn't fit the model. The risk assessment for the entire project was suddenly flashing yellow. The next evening, I initiated a formal review. We sat on our charcoal gray sofa, the one she'd picked out. I didn't raise my voice. I wasn't accusatory. I framed it as a simple request for information. Sandra, I began, I love you and the future we're building. But for that to work, it has to be built on a foundation of complete honesty. I feel like there have been some inconsistencies in your history lately, and it's making me feel unsettled. I expected a discussion, maybe tears, maybe frustration. I did not expect the person I loved to vanish and be replaced by a cold, defiant stranger. She crossed her arms, her face hardening into a mask of contempt. Fine, she said, her voice devoid of warmth. Okay, so I embellished. My dad isn't a surgeon, he's a pharmacist. We weren't rich, we were barely middle class. The locket was from an ex. I lied. So what? So what? The phrase was a grenade that detonated the entire structure of our relationship. It wasn't just about the lies. It was the absolute, staggering entitlement of that question. The implication that my need for truth was a character flaw, an annoyance for her to manage. In that instant, all emotion drained out of me, replaced by a crystalline, cold clarity. You don't try to patch a foundation that has proven to be sand. You condemn the sight and walk away. I met her hard gaze. I even managed a small, tight smile. You're right, I said softly. So what? The relief that washed over her face was palpable. She thought she'd won. She hugged me, and I hugged her back, the scent of her perfume filling my lungs. But in my mind, the project plan for our future was already in the shredder. A new one was being drafted. Project name, Operation Severance. The next morning, I emailed my boss and took a personal day. My first stop was a discreet office building downtown. I sat across from Mr. Fisher, a private investigator whose tired eyes didn't match the sharpness of his suit. I wrote a check for a $5,000 retainer. I need to know who she really is, I said, sliding her photo across the desk. Her real family history, her financial situation, and I especially want to know everything about the ex who gave her this locket. The man she claims was a stalker. Mr. Fisher pocketed the check and the photo. You'll have a preliminary report in a week. I walked out of that office into the bright sun. The grief was there, a cold stone in my gut, but it was secondary. The project manager had taken over. Phase 1, discovery, was now underway. Update 1. It's been 7 days of living inside a lie. I've been the model partner. I've feigned enthusiasm for Zillow listings she sent me for our future house. I've nodded and sympathized about her work drama. I've lived and breathed a relationship that, to me, is already dead. Every moment has been a strain, a calculated performance while waiting for the axe to fall. The email from Mr. Fisher arrived last night. Subject, preliminary findings, S. Jensen. I waited until I heard the steady rhythm of Sandra's breathing from the bedroom. I took my laptop, not to the bathroom, but to the small balcony, the cool night air feeling like a shock to my system. I opened the file. The truth was worse than I'd braced myself for. It was a systematic demolition of the woman I thought I knew. Family. Her father is indeed a pharmacist, or was. His license was revoked 2 years ago for prescription fraud. He now works as a pharmacy tech under supervision. Her mother is a receptionist at a dental clinic. They live in a rented trailer in a different state and have a long history of debt and a prior bankruptcy. Education. She has 2 completed semesters of community college to her name and an outstanding student loan for a degree she abandoned. The ex-fiancé, this was the main event. The stalker, Matthew, was her fiancé of 4 years. The A on the locket stands for Ashley, Sandra's middle name, which she never uses. Matthew was an electrician who had just launched his own small business. The report, citing public records and interviews, laid out a pattern of calculated destruction. She convinced him to add her to his business credit cards to help manage expenses. She then ran up over $70,000 in debt on luxury goods, spa treatments, and a vehicle she registered solely in her name. When he discovered the fraud and confronted her, she didn't just leave. She filed a false domestic violence report and took out a temporary restraining order, creating the stalker narrative to isolate him from their mutual friends. The legal battle and the debt forced him to dissolve his business and sell his truck. He was financially and reputationally ruined. I had to stop reading. I leaned my head against the cold railing of the balcony. It wasn't just anger I felt. It was a profound, sickening sense of pity. Not for her, but for him. For Matthew, and for the utter fool I had been. Her sense of entitlement since our talk has been off the charts. It's as if, by forgiving her lies, I've given her a license to demand more. Yesterday she said, "That promotion you're getting should be enough for a down payment on the colonial I like. We should make an offer. We deserve it. We deserve it." The same phrase a predator might think before sinking its teeth into its prey. I just smiled and said, "Let's get the promotion first, babe." The plan has moved into the execution phase. I found a new apartment, a small, sterile 1-bedroom in a high-security building across town. I signed the lease this morning. Operation Severance is scheduled for this Friday. She has a mandatory, all-day company retreat. A perfect window. I've been packing in secret. A box of books here, a duffel bag of essential clothes there, all hidden in the back of my car or the deep recesses of the closet. She hasn't noticed a thing. She's too busy planning a future that isn't going to happen. Update 2. It's done. I'm on an air mattress in my new, empty apartment. The silence is absolute. It's the sound of a project completed, a terrible chapter closed. Yesterday was about logistics, not emotions. Sandra kissed me goodbye. "Don't forget to call the realtor about that house," she said, smiling. I smiled back. "Have a great retreat." I watched her car pull away until it was just a speck. I sent a text to the movers. "We are a go." I began the purge. It was a systematic extraction, my life being packed into cardboard. I didn't take anything we bought together. The sofa, the dining table, the bed, all hers, bought with funds from the car Matthew's debt had paid for. I emptied the photo frames of our pictures and left the frames themselves. I took my espresso machine, my work monitor, my clothes, my books. The plan hit its first snag, a real-world variable. As the movers were carrying my desk out, our next-door neighbor Dorothy opened her door. She's a retiree who adores Sandra, her face wrinkled in confusion. "Paul, what on earth is going on? Are you two moving?" My heart hammered. This wasn't in the plan. I had to improvise. "Morning, Dorothy," I said, forcing a casual tone. No, nothing like that. Just finally getting around to moving my winter gear and old work files into a storage unit. Clearing out space, you know? Sandra's idea, actually. A little spring cleaning. She didn't look convinced. "Oh, well, it seems like an awful lot of stuff for storage." She lingered, watching every box that went by. I knew she would text Sandra. The timeline had just been compromised. 11:30. The movers were gone. I did one last cold walkthrough. The apartment felt vast and wrong. Her presence was everywhere, but my absence was a gaping wound. On her pillow I placed the locket. It was the only thing of hers I touched. A silent confession that I knew everything. I then took the spare key she'd given me and laid it beside the locket. As I was about to walk out, my phone buzzed. A text from Sandra. "Dorothy just sent me the weirdest text. Said you have movers? What TEF is going on, Paul? Call me." The project was now critical. I didn't reply. I walked out, closed the door softly behind me, and drove away without looking back. In my new, empty apartment, the phone buzzed and rang relentlessly. I powered it off. I needed silence to complete the final step. I turned my laptop on, logged into my email, and composed a single formal message. I sent it to her work address, knowing she wouldn't see it until she got back to a computer. Subject: lease and belongings. "Sandra, this email is to confirm I have vacated the apartment. All of my belongings have been removed. The lease is in your name, so you will have no issues with management. I know about Matthew. I know about the locket. I know about all of it. Do not contact me again. Paul." Then, I methodically blocked her number, her social media profiles, and the numbers of her immediate family and closest friends. It wasn't about malice. It was about creating a sterile environment, a clean break. The storm is here. I accelerated the timeline, and now I just have to ride it out. Final update. It's been a month, a long, quiet, and unsettling month. The fallout wasn't a single explosion, as I'd expected. It was a series of aftershocks, information arriving in fragments that I had to piece together like an incident report. The first week was a siege. Calls from unknown numbers, emails to my work address from anonymous accounts, a friend request on LinkedIn from a profile that was clearly her. I ignored it all. My silence was a wall, and she was hurling herself against it. About 10 days after I left, I got a call from her mother again. I had her number blocked, but she used her husband's phone. I almost declined, but morbid curiosity got the better of me. Her tone wasn't angry this time. It was broken. "Paul," she whispered, and I could hear her weeping. "I got that email you sent, the report. Please, just tell me it's a lie. Tell me you made it all up because you were angry." "I wish I could," I said, my voice flat. "But it's all true, and you know it, or you wouldn't be calling me. You'd be calling a lawyer." There was a choked sob on the other end, then silence. She hung up. That was the first confirmation that the truth bomb had hit its target. The enablers were wavering. The second piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks ago, I checked the public court records database for the county where Matthew lives. It's a habit from my job, verifying permits and legal filings. I typed in her name. And there it was, a civil case filed 2 weeks prior. Matthew Jensen versus Sandra Ashley Jensen. The charge was fraud. My anonymous email had worked. He had his ammunition, and he was using it. A slow, grinding consequence was now in motion. The third piece came from Kimberly, her best friend. After my initial move, she had sent me a barrage of furious texts, which I ignored. Then, last week, I got a simple one-line email from her. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what I said. I asked her about Matthew. She told me to mind my own business. That was all the answer I needed. The social circle was fracturing, not in a dramatic fight, but in quiet, sad resignations. The final, most disturbing piece of the puzzle came last night. A call from an unknown number. It was Dorothy, the neighbor. Her voice was trembling. "Paul, I'm so sorry to bother you. I still had your number from that time the water heater broke. It's Sandra. Something awful has happened. An ambulance just took her away. She was screaming, just screaming in the hallway. The landlord said something about a complete breakdown." I felt a cold dread wash over me. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up. Her world, built on a scaffold of lies, had been methodically dismantled. Not by me, but by the truth. The legal case from Matthew exposed her past, Her parents' confrontation, which I later heard was brutal, removed her family's safety net. Her friends' questions, sparked by my information, dissolved her social support. She was left alone in an apartment she couldn't afford, with nothing but the wreckage of her own deception. The locket on the pillow wasn't a threat. It was a mirror. And she couldn't handle the reflection. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel happy. I feel a profound, grim sense of finality. A project manager's cold satisfaction in seeing a flawed, unstable structure finally collapse under its own weight. Her breakdown wasn't my revenge. It was an inevitable, catastrophic system failure. I'm moving on. My apartment is starting to feel like a home. The silence is no longer unsettling, it's peaceful. The project of Sandra is over. The final post-mortem report is complete. It's time to archive the files and start drawing up plans for something new, something built on solid ground.